"This family doesn't need you," she smirked. Then I changed everything. The words hit me harder than a slap. "This family doesn't need you anymore." My daughter-in-law, Brittany, stood in the middle of my son's living room with a smug smile stretched across her face. The room fell silent. My son, Ethan, looked down at the floor instead of defending me. I waited. I prayed he would say something, anything. But he didn't. The woman I had welcomed into our family was standing there telling me I was no longer needed, and my own son couldn't even look me in the eye. At 62 years old, I suddenly felt invisible, a burden. A leftover piece of a family I had spent my entire life building. The worst part? This wasn't the first time. For nearly 3 years, Brittany had slowly pushed me further and further away. At first, it was small things. Family dinners I wasn't invited to. Holiday plans I found out about through Facebook photos. Birthday parties scheduled without anyone bothering to tell me. Every time I brought it up, Ethan had an excuse. "Mom, it wasn't intentional. Mom, you're overthinking." "Mom, Brittany didn't mean it like that." But I knew exactly what was happening, and so did Brittany. She wanted me gone. She just didn't expect me to finally stop fighting for a seat at a table where nobody wanted me. The confrontation happened during my granddaughter, Lily's 8th birthday party. I had spent weeks planning the perfect gift. Lily loved horses, so I bought her riding lessons at a beautiful ranch outside town. The smile on her face made every dollar worth it. But Brittany saw things differently. As soon as Lily ran off to show her friends the gift certificate, Brittany marched over. "You really need to stop trying to buy affection." The room went quiet. Several relatives looked uncomfortable. I laughed nervously. I was just trying to make Lily happy. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "This family doesn't need you." The smirk on her face told me she had been waiting years to say those words. I looked at Ethan, my son, the boy I had raised by myself after his father died, the boy I worked 3 jobs to support, the boy whose college tuition I paid by selling my wedding ring. He said nothing. Not a single word. That's when something inside me broke, not with anger, not with sadness, with clarity. I smiled. "Maybe you're right." Brittany looked confused. Ethan finally glanced up. I picked up my purse, kissed Lily on the forehead, and walked out the front door. Nobody followed me. Nobody stopped me. Nobody cared. Or so they thought, because while Brittany believed she had won, she had no idea she had just handed me the greatest opportunity of my life. You see, there was one thing nobody in that room knew. One thing I had kept secret for years, the family business, the company my late husband and I started from our garage 40 years earlier, the company now worth millions, the company whose future ownership was entirely up to me. And after hearing those words, "This family doesn't need you," I decided it was finally time to find out exactly who needed whom. What happened next destroyed Brittany's plans, exposed years of lies, and forced my son to make the hardest decision of his life. By the time it was over, the woman who tried to erase me from the family would be begging for a second chance. But some doors only close once. And some lessons cost everything. I drove home that afternoon with tears blurring my vision. Not because Brittany had insulted me, not even because Ethan had stayed silent. I cried because, for the first time in my life, I accepted the truth. I had spent years begging people to value me. Years making excuses for disrespect. Years convincing myself that if I just loved harder, gave more, sacrificed more, eventually they would appreciate me. But respect doesn't work that way. And neither does love. When I arrived home, I sat alone in my kitchen and stared at an old photograph hanging on the wall. It showed my husband, Robert, standing beside me in front of our first workshop. We were young, broke, terrified, but hopeful. The business behind us had started with a single borrowed truck and less than $500. Over 4 decades, that little company became one of the most successful construction supply firms in the state. After Robert died, I continued running it. Most people assumed Ethan would eventually inherit everything. That was certainly what Brittany believed. The problem was that ownership had never been automatic. Every share, every asset, every decision. belonged to me, and I suddenly realized something. If I was unnecessary to my family, then perhaps my money was unnecessary too. The next morning I called my attorney. "It's time," I said. There was silence. "Are you sure?" Yes. 3 weeks later, the paperwork was complete. The family trust was rewritten. The inheritance plan was rewritten. Everything was rewritten, but I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Meanwhile, life continued. Or at least it seemed to. Months passed, no calls, no visits, no invitations. Ethan occasionally sent short texts. "Hope you're okay, Bussy, this week. Talk soon." But soon never came. Lily was the only one who reached out. Every few weeks she would call and tell me about school. I never missed her birthday, never missed Christmas, never stopped loving her. But I stopped chasing everyone else, and something surprising happened. My life got better, much better. I joined a travel club, made new friends, started volunteering, visited places I had always dreamed of seeing. For the first time in decades, my happiness wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. Then came the phone call nearly a year after Brittany's famous speech. "Mom, can we talk?" It was Ethan. His voice sounded nervous. Of course. When he arrived at my house, he looked exhausted, older, faded. "What happened?" I asked. He rubbed his face. "The business is struggling." I raised an eyebrow. "What business? Brittany's online company?" Of course. 2 years earlier, Brittany had quit her job and launched a luxury lifestyle brand. She spent money like water Dundar's offices, luxury retreats, influencers, expensive marketing campaigns. She constantly bragged about becoming a millionaire. Now reality had arrived. "We need help," Ethan admitted. I said nothing. "Mom, we're drowning." For several seconds, the room remained silent. Then I asked a question. "Does your family need me now?" His face turned white. The words hit exactly where they needed to. He looked away. "I deserve that." "Yes," I replied calmly. "You do." For the first time, Ethan cried, not dramatic tears. Real tears, the kind that come from regret. "I failed you. I didn't interrupt. I kept choosing peace instead of doing what was right. Still, I said nothing. Every time Brittany crossed a line, I stayed silent because confrontation was easier to avoid." His voice broke, but silence became betrayal. Those words mattered because they were true. Then he told me something I never expected. Their marriage was falling apart. The business debt was enormous. The stress had exposed who Brittany really was. She blamed everyone for her problems. Employees, partners, investors, even Ethan. Nothing was ever her fault. For years, Ethan had defended her behavior. Now he was finally seeing it clearly. But understanding the truth didn't erase the damage. A few weeks later, another surprise arrived. Brittany showed up at my front door, alone. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the smirk. Gone was the superiority. She looked terrified. "I need to talk." I invited her inside. For several minutes, she couldn't even make eye contact. Then she finally whispered it. "I'm sorry. I waited. I treated you horribly." She started crying. I was jealous. That wasn't the answer I expected. "Jealous?" She nodded. "Everyone loved you." The confession poured out. She felt insecure, threatened, compared. She wanted to be the center of everything. And the easiest way to achieve that was to push me out. Every insult, every exclusion, every cruel comment had been intentional. She wanted me gone. And for a while she succeeded. When she finished talking, she looked up. "Can you forgive me?" I thought carefully before answering. Forgiveness and trust are different things. She lowered her head. "I know. I forgive you." Her shoulders shook with relief, but the consequences remain. The tears returned, because deep down, she already knew. Several months later, the family gathered again, this time in a law office. My attorney sat at the head of the table. Everyone looked nervous, including Ethan, including Brittany. The documents were distributed. The room became silent. Then the reading began. My estate plan, my business succession plan, my charitable foundation, every page, every decision, every choice. Carefully explained. The biggest shock came last. The company would not pass to Ethan, at least not directly. Instead, controlling ownership was transferred into a foundation supporting scholarships for single parents and struggling families, the same kind of families Robert and I had once been. The business would continue. The employees would be protected. The community would benefit. But nobody would receive a personal fortune. Brittany's face drained of color. Years of assumptions disappeared in seconds. There would be no jackpot, no massive inheritance, no easy payday. Only responsibility, only purpose, only service. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Lily did. By now she was old enough to understand. She smiled. Grandma, Grandpa would have loved that. Those 7 words meant more than every dollar in the room because she understood. The legacy was never money. The legacy was character. Years later, people still ask whether I regret changing everything. My answer is always the same. No, because the greatest revenge wasn't taking anything away. The greatest revenge was refusing to let disrespect determine my worth. Brittany thought she was removing me from the family. Instead, she forced me to rediscover myself. She thought she was taking my place. Instead, she exposed her own character, and Ethan learned a lesson he would never forget. The people who love you don't lose you all at once. They lose you one silent moment at a time. As for me, I never needed revenge. I needed boundaries. The revenge happened naturally when the people who underestimated me finally realized my value after it was too late. And the woman who once smirked and said, "This family doesn't need you," spent the rest of her life remembering the day she discovered exactly how wrong she was. 3 months after the estate meeting, I thought the story was over. I was wrong. One rainy Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was Lily. She sounded excited. "Grandma, can you come to my school tomorrow?" "Of course. Why? It's a surprise." The next afternoon, I walked into the school auditorium. Prints filled the seats. Teachers stood along the walls. A banner hung above the stage. Annual Immunity Hero Awitsi had no idea why Lily wanted me there. Then the principal stepped to the microphone. "Today we are honoring someone whose generosity has changed countless lives in our community." A slideshow appeared on the screen. My heart nearly stopped. Photos of scholarship recipients, single mothers receiving assistance, students attending college, families rebuilding their lives, all through the foundation Robert and I had created. Whispers spread through the crowd. Many people hadn't known who funded the programs. Then Lily walked onto the stage, holding a piece of paper in trembling hands. The room became silent. She looked directly at me. "My grandma taught me something important." I felt tears forming instantly. Lily continued. "She taught me that strong people don't hurt others when they're hurt." The audience listened carefully. "She taught me that kindness is not weakness." My chest tightened. "And she taught me that family isn't about who gets your money." Several people nodded. "It's about who stands beside you when you have nothing." By this point, I could barely see through my tears. Then Lily smiled. The same smile her grandfather used to have. "My grandma changed thousands of lives without asking for credit." The audience erupted into applause. But then something unexpected happened. Lily looked toward the back of the room. "Mom, Dad, would you come up here?" Ethan and Brittany slowly walked onto the stage. The entire auditorium watched. Ethan took the microphone first. "I spent years taking my mother for granted." His voice shook. "I confused her love with an obligation." The room was completely silent. She deserved my loyalty. He glanced toward me, and I failed her. Then Brittany stepped forward. The woman who once smirked and dismissed me looked completely different now, not because of age, because of humility. She took a deep breath. "A few years ago, I told this woman our family didn't need her." The audience gasped softly. Brittany lowered her eyes. "It was the cruelest thing I've ever said." Tears streamed down her face. "And the greatest mistake of my life." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I was so focused on what she had that I never appreciated who she was. Then she turned toward me. "Thank you for giving me a second chance I didn't deserve." The room stood and applauded, every single person. I wasn't crying because they were finally praising me. I was crying because people had changed. Real change, the kind that comes through pain, honesty, and accountability. After the ceremony ended, Lily wrapped her arms around me. "Grandma? Yes, sweetheart? Are you happy now?" I looked around, at my son, at my granddaughter, at the lives being changed through the foundation, at the future Robert and I had created. Then I smiled. For the first time in years, there was no sadness, no resentment, no need to prove anything. Just peace. I am, and in that moment I realized something. Success isn't watching your enemies fail. Success is building a life so meaningful that even the people who once doubted you are inspired to become better. The woman who said I wasn't needed gave me an unexpected gift. She forced me to discover my own worth. And once you know your worth, nobody can ever take it away again. The end.